Welcome to the HR Chat podcast, bringing the best of the HR and talent communities to you.
Welcome to another episode of the HR Chat podcast series. I'm the host, Bill Bannum.
Robin Schooling, welcome to the HR Chat podcast. It's great to have you here today.
Thank you, Bill. It's my pleasure.
So let's get straight into the questions. We've got lots to chat about today. So firstly, can we have a look at your career up to joining Hollywood Casino Baton Rouge? Can you maybe tell me a bit about your earlier career and why you decided to go into the world of talent and HR?
Oh, absolutely. And, interestingly, and I think this is not uncommon, I actually fell into HR, and I think a lot of people sort of ended up here in that manner. I actually started working at a staffing agency many years ago, sort of a catch-all position, working on the temp side as well as the direct placement side, kind of supporting everybody, and really enjoyed that. And that led to my first in-house HR position, and so I morphed that into working in HR. I was an in-house recruiter at a bank for probably about 5 years, and that was really my first exposure to the larger world of HR. And after spending some time there, probably about 5 years or so, just continued to move on into different things. Went and took some generalist roles, started doing some HR manager, HR director roles. But over the years, when I look back, I've really gone back and forth. And while I've stayed in-house, certainly throughout the course of my career, I went back and forth from in-house recruiting, in-house recruiter manager roles to actual HR generalist, HR director manager roles like that. So kind of split it up between the two, and I think that sort of gave me some depth and experience because I specialized and then went back to generalist roles and really worked in a variety of industries. I've done everything from banking and healthcare, higher education to third-party logistics, working at I had several sites. I was sort of a regional support HR person, and I was actually on site in some chemical plants, so kind of a manufacturing type environment, and then landed in the gaming industry for the first time about 11 years ago, and have sort of stayed in this role, in this world ever since, in addition to a brief step out on my own for a couple of years doing some consulting.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. What is it that you love about the gaming world?
It's a fascinating industry, and it's very fast paced. It's as is the case with most businesses. You can certainly say no day is like any other, but that is certainly true here. It is, obviously we're 24/7, 365. We are our busiest when everybody else is off of work. So our busy times are weekends and holidays, and we're here to, create fun and entertainment and excitement for other people. And so it's hard work, and our staff work incredibly diligently to do that. But it's it's fascinating. It's such a different world because it's hospitality and food and beverage and sort of that service retail aspect, but then you layer on gaming and the oversight that we have, obviously, dealing with money and regulations and things like that, and just the gaming aspect and the integrity issues that come with that. So it's fascinating and very, very unique industry. I had worked at one casino previously, so I knew what I was getting into when I joined this one, and I liked it then and like it now.
Okay, so this one is the Hollywood Casino Baton Rouge. Tell me a bit
Hmm.
about your position there as VP of Human Resources. What are your key duties, Robin, and what does an average work week look like for you there, if there is such a thing?
There, I think every week is different, but we certainly can, we have different times of the year. I guess I should say more so than different weeks. Um, so we handle, so my department handles, all the traditional HR functions. So overseeing the recruiting and staffing and talent acquisition programs for the property. We have, of course, performance management. We deal with benefits and compensation issues, um, training, general training. The departments, do very, department specific training and that sort of thing. Employee relations issues. We do not have a union, thank goodness. There are some certainly entities in the gaming industry that do have collective bargaining agreements. We do not, so we don't have that as an issue here. But general employee relations issues, a lot of support, I guess. Within our HR function, we are very much what I like to call in your face HR. We are we are very visible. We are very involved, sort of from that service aspect, and that may sound kind of old-fashioned, but it's something that serves us well. That we believe in. Our employees come to us um, for assistance and support and advice. Our managers come in here to talk through issues, whether they be performance issues with a staff member. So we are very much an accessible, open, involved HR department, and really, really kind of get knee deep sometimes with our employees, really to make them successful, and whatever that may be, whether that be helping them navigate their benefits or helping them navigate through leave of absence situations that may arise. We really take that service piece of what we do to our existing staff pretty seriously.
Okay, so you mentioned there you go knee deep. You're knee deep in the
Hmm.
trenches. You're a proper practitioner of human
Exactly.
resources. So part of your role at the Hollywood Casino involves translating the business strategy and the direction into the HR strategy, and then the delivery from the
Hmm.
employees. So I'm always intrigued to get an insight from practitioners in terms of what's needed to be that conduit, that person
Hmm.
or that department that manages up and
Hmm.
then takes that decisions and implements them on the ground floor. Um, what unique personality traits, perhaps? What unique
Hmm.
processes? What does the communication look like? What goes into being that conduit?
Well, I think, obviously as with most businesses, revenue attainment and growth is our ultimate goal, obviously. And so this one thing I have found definitely in this industry, and certainly here at my property and with my company, is is involved in those discussions, and we have a really good team of people that work on that. So we in HR definitely need to know and understand. We have daily projections. What do we anticipate the patron count is going to be on any given day? What does the week look like? What does the month look like? When are the busy times of year? How do we need to assist the departments in staffing up or staffing down? And it's really based on a lot of deep data and analysis that our analysis department pumps out every day. Every day we get this. We know what the projections are, and we can forecast, coming up for time of year or month of the year, that sort of thing. Um, we understand, we're involved with, the marketing objectives, what are the player goals, and so again, that becomes more of a assist and advise the managers or the department heads, as they're planning their staffing levels or making decisions, what sort of training do they need to do, what sorts of issues may they run into that we need to anticipate. So, as an example, spring is a busy time for us. When we hit really end of February into March and April is one of our busiest times of year from a player patron count standpoint, the number of people that we have coming and revenue projections. And so we worked with the casino operations department and planned, and we actually have this calendarized now for the year, but we currently have a dealer trainee school going. So that these dealer trainees, these are people who don't have dealer experience but want to learn. So we recruited people to come in. We hire them as trainees. They are our employees, and they are attending dealer school right now. They're about halfway through. Once they end dealer school, they will go through an audition process, and they pass that audition, and then they will move into a regular dealer position. And so the timing of that involves, finance to some degree, but HR and the casino operations team to figure out, well, when do we want to hold that dealer school, because we want these people to come out the other end, be trained, and be ready to hit the gaming floor when we're at our busiest time. So, we get involved in those discussions and kind of helping plan for the business needs as well as, any sort of promotions or things that we may have going on. And so part of that becomes getting involved, obviously on that year-long business strategy. I guess from the other end, where I see us kind of translating that strategy from the ground up, becomes really a matter of education, and that education flowing from HR, from our property HR up to our corporate office. Our corporate office is in another state. Baton Rouge is kind of unique. We're a very local market. Our core players are local. Our employees, many have been here a number of years. And so some of the things that our corporate office up in the Northeast United States may think works for them or works for a different property, I need to translate up to them. Here's why that may or may not work at the Baton Rouge property, and here's why. And here's this understanding of what our employees need, want, how they can adapt to something like that. So it's almost educating the corporate HR staff, some of the other folks at corporate, and as well as my GM, my boss, who's here on the property. He's very involved, but sometimes, because he's the GM, he may not hear some things, so I need to translate those for him sometimes.
And so you're in a pretty unique position to translate some of those things sometimes, because you are a celebrity within the world of HR. So you've got that. So you got that extra kudos. You've got that that extra pizzazz. Oh gosh, what an 80s word.
I like pizzazz.
But that must open up a lot of extra opportunities for you to be able to convey your message to the team and get them on board with where you're trying to go, because they read and they consume your lessons all the time. But does it also present some extra obstacles?
I think it does sometimes, but I think it also then comes back to sort of translating things back to the reality. So let me, as an example, I personally love nothing more than reading and consuming or having conversations with people from around the country or around the world who are doing, sort of this next generation HR. Who's on the cutting edge? What are these really cool things that are going on? All these tools and technologies, and who's doing what? And oh my God, wouldn't that be great? And ooh, I wish we could, adapt, whatever. Just here recently, Facebook announced this, incredibly enhanced leave policy for their employees. I love that stuff. I love to talk about it. I share that stuff with my team and or managers at the property, but then have the opportunity to come back to them and say, okay, but this is cool, but this is why this is not necessarily our reality, and that may be okay, but how can we take lessons from that and apply that to us? So sometimes I will share those things, and before I can even say, I realize this is not our reality, I may get pushback from people saying, oh, well, just because you're reading that or writing about that, we can't do that. So there sometimes is a little bit of pushback, but I think it's important to open those conversations and drive a movement towards what others around the world are doing, what others in our industry are doing, and I think I add value to the team by doing that, because I continue to be the one kind of grabbing that information and hopefully educating people on at least making them think.
Well, absolutely. One of your big motivations is pushing for HR to remain relevant. You say that all the time, right? Yeah, and you were just giving examples there about information that you share with colleagues and whatnot to trying to keep them up to speed with different technologies, different practices. What do HR leaders and teams need to do to keep pace with the changing world of work? So for example, you send somebody an email and say, check out this awesome new software tool to help with our performance management, for example. What are the expectations of them in terms of what they do with that information?
I think one of the boxes that I find myself in, and that I think is not uncommon, becomes the box drawn around, well, we can't spend the money type of thing. I have a defined budget. There are certain things that I know I will, never get into my budget, or it's not going to be seen as priority type of thing. So that's probably one of the first constraints that I run into, and I think that's not unusual. That's most any HR practitioner. It is finding a way to make a business case for why this is important or why an expenditure is important. I think the other obstacle that I face, and again, this is not uncommon, is that leaders, people in HR, but also are the same way, but organizational leaders or managers are very quick to rely on stereotypes or just dismiss things out of hand because, oh, we tried something once, or, oh, you don't understand, or this is never going to work here. So generational stereotypes, probably one of the big ones when I've had conversations with people over the last couple of years about finding ways. One of my big things is internal communication. How are we ramping this up? How are we communicating with our staff? We're in dire need of some new solutions to that. So as I've floated some things out there, there's a lack of understanding of how our employees want to be communicated with, need to be communicated with. And so I've heard the tired line of, oh, well, that's our, oh, yes, of course our 22-year-old employees want to be communicated that way, but that's not everybody. That's a generational thing. Well, no, it's not. It's, don't resort to that sort of stereotype, and let's talk about it, and let me show you, either some internal data on, how we've communicated with people as they've been applicants, and now they're our employees, and so that's why I'm making this particular suggestion. So a lot of times it's asking the question back to the leaders of why do you think that way? Why do you think people, want to work that way? Another issue that we run into, when we look at things like, remote working or, flexible, I almost want to say flexible work more than anything. We really can't do remote working because obviously we are a customer-driven business. We have to be here. But when we look at changing scheduling models to allow a little more, as much as we can, allow a little more flexibility for our employees, that's a difficult conversation to have here, because most of our leaders, most of our managers have worked in this industry or this type of industry their entire career, and they are very accustomed to, there's a, day shift, swing shift, grave shift, the hours are XYZ. Nope, we can't adjust. There's penalties instead of, there's sticks instead of carrots when people don't work as they're supposed to. So it's changing the whole dynamic of how we get people, but also retain people around how we work. And that's a difficult conversation to have here at my property, and I think that's probably true in my industry. It's very much so, this is just how it works. No, people, we can't offer flexibility around schedules. That's just the way it is, and so people just need to take it or decide not to work here. That's a big shift, and that's something that needs to be shifted, and I'm kind of struggling with it right now.
Okay, get with it, hospitality industry. The carrot tastes much nicer than the stick.
Exactly.
So far we've mainly chatted about internal communications. Let's now talk a little bit about some of those communications that go out there into the ether. So social media. Social media has changed, of course, how candidates and employees interact with employer brands. Can you offer maybe a top 3 suggestions around what job seekers should use social networking for when it comes to portraying the right image and getting a dialogue going with a potential employer?
Yeah, I think I think from a job seeker standpoint, the best use or the things they can gain from using social media, whatever channel that may be, is networking with other people, connecting with people, learning about organizations or information that's pertinent to their specific career, and even job hunting. If for example on Twitter or Instagram or something, they identify that the correct hashtags that they want to follow. So I think that opportunity has been there now for a number of years, and I think some people aren't fully utilizing it. I do definitely, though, see that there continues to be a lack of awareness from job seekers of how they're presenting themselves online, and just that need to be cautious of their online footprint, if you will. We saw a lot of that. I think we're going to see a lot of that continue to trickle out with this, recent, shall we say, hot political climate that we have found ourselves in. We won't get into politics, but things have gotten very personal.
We're based up here in Canada, Robin. We keep out of all of that kind of thing.
Oh, I know. There have been so many online conversations, and I have seen people, living their life, doing their thing, as people want to do, and I applaud people for living their life and doing their thing, no matter their opinion. But some people are posting things that others are, screen grabbing and keeping for posterity and sharing with employers. Did you see what your employee said or did or whatever, and calling for them to be fired and, things like that. So I think that's that's a challenge. It's a reality, and I think people just need to be cautious about it. I'm not saying live in a shell and don't voice your opinion, but be very aware that potential employers may see that. You may not know that they saw it. You may not know that they don't approve of something that you portrayed online, but I think that's a reality, that people just really need to, that's kind of the negative side of using social media for job seeking or learning or connecting with recruiters.
So at your company, do you guys have a social media policy that employees sign when they join?
We do.
Yeah, please.
Yeah, we do. The official policy is a long one that was once upon a time, of course, originally drafted by an attorney. That's the official policy. When we do new employee onboarding, we do new hires join us every biweekly. We call it dress rehearsal. Get it? Hollywood Casino. We call it dress rehearsal. Is our day of new hire onboarding. And so when we go through policies, we don't go through the 10-page policy. So the points that we make are 3 points. Be nice. Don't release proprietary information, and don't be stupid. And we encourage people to share the story of the brand. We want them to go out and say, be proud that they work here. Tell your friends. Tag the casino in your posts. We encourage people to do that, but we also remind them of things they should not do. So they can't take, pictures from the gaming floor and send pictures out. They are not to share posts or information about customers or players that are here, any proprietary information, things that they need to keep behind the wall. And we just remind them, be nice, just be cautious. Don't go on talking about your coworkers or your supervisors in a demeaning way. We don't want to tread too deeply into the nuts and bolts of it, of what might be protected activity that they have a right to share, but we ask them to be human and be nice and share the good things, and then we give them a couple examples of employees who did not follow those rules, who no longer work here. So I always think telling them what doesn't work or what not to do kind of drives it home even more so.
Okay, thank you very much. There's a whole big can of worms that we could go into, around what employees say on social media, but perhaps I'll get you on for another interview and we'll delve into it. We're coming towards the end of this particular interview. Before we wrap things up, just a couple of last questions for you, Robin. Firstly, you have spoken at lots of big HR-related events, of course, such as the Talent Management Alliance's HRBP conference and SHRM. Tell me, what do you think makes for an engaging presentation? And do HR pros offer unique challenges and opportunities compared to, say, addressing a room of C-level execs?
I think, I guess no matter what audience I've been at, and I have tended to speak to more HR audiences than non-HR audiences, although I've had a mix. Probably one of the funnest ones was a group of business analysts here in Baton Rouge. It was quite interesting. They were very fun. But I think the key for me is always, I go in with hopefully educating, entertaining, and to some degree provoking, and throwing something out there that may make people uncomfortable, perhaps, or think of something in a new way. So, I have certainly done some presentations where I've kind of been fired up and said, and this was a few years ago, but hey, HR people, if you don't change, you're going away, type of thing. And people clutch their pearls and get a little, upset. But I think, pushing the buttons and making people think about things in a different way, while also giving them a reason to want to change or how to start changing their behavior or action or taking what they've learned, I think is key. I think HR audiences tend to be, it's sort of a mixed bag. I think they can be a little more hypercritical of their peers. I was told once I was too racy because I had some sexual innuendo in something, and that's okay. It made my point. So HR pros can be a little hypercritical of their peers, but at the same time, and as an audience member, this is true as well. HR professionals love to hear from their peers at the same time. They would much rather, I think, be at an event with colleagues speaking because they know that those people do their job and live their life. And learning from each other, I think, provides immense value rather than going to an event or a conference where it's, super smart people and, thought-provoking and, presenting information. But it's people that aren't doing the job, in some cases have never done the job or hadn't done it for 15 years. And HR people get a little cynical about that.
Okay, so I think that could be a subheading in the article that comes with this podcast, Robin. Robin Schooling, keeping HR presentations sexy.
Exactly.
Okay, and on that note, we're coming to the end of the show. Before we do complete everything today, how can our listeners learn more about you?
Well, I am all over the internet, although not as active as I once was, but still pretty active. So I'm on Twitter at Robin Schooling. My website /blog is robinschooling.com. You can find me on LinkedIn. I've got stuff up on SlideShare. I just tell people to Google me and connect with me where they find me.
Robin Schooling, thank you very much for being our guest today. It's been an honor. I'd love to get you on again in the future, but for now, thank you very much.
Thank you, Bill. This was great.
Thank you for listening to the HR Chat Podcast, brought to you by the HR Gazette.